Hello, folk. I came back from the watching the little video clip, and I noticed that our live video had ended. So, can anybody confirm? Are we having a problem? I've restarted a new link. And is anybody there? Hello. Is anybody able to hear me and see me right now? Or have we lost a thread in our connection? Um, we seem to be having some kind of problem here. What is up? Um, I wonder what's the problem. Okay, well, thank you, Cassandra, for confirming that we are in fact on live. We did seem to have some kind of problem because suddenly the Facebook Live video ended while I was sharing something else. But I shall just assume that folk are getting on board, and I shall continue with our agenda. And so let me just now share this with you. So today's session is focused on the South Africa's Day of Reconciliation, December 16th. And our agenda is really tracing connections that flow like the river with multiple tributaries in our exploration of the Circle of Four Nations legacy work of grandfather William Commander, Algonquin elder, born in 1913 and who lived till 2011, sharing his message of bridge building. And I'm just going to confirm Carmen can see me, yes. And so hopefully the other folk will join us on the stream in case they've gotten kind of like lost someplace. And then this basically is my plan for today. And let me say that this special event is provoked partly because of a chance encounter and a chance discussion with a fellow South African. And Jackie Mana and I are both part of a new uh, art drawing class with our friend Janice Canton. Some Circle of All Nations folk may recall that uh, Grandfather Commander received the National Aboriginal Achievement Lifetime Award in 2010. And at the same time, one of my favorite Justice Elders, Elder Tom Cranberry, received the award for cultural heritage. And Janice Tanton accompanied him to Ottawa, and that's when I met my older elder Tom, and we connected with um, Jackie. And then during this last trip, Jackie offered an art class, and I decided to go check her out because I knew she'd been doing some wonderful teaching in Haida Gwaii a few years back, and I'd always envied the folk who had been able to go join her on that amazing experience. In this process, I met Jackie, and I see Jackie is back online. I hope Emmeline is as well, and and uh, and that is how we came to discuss our common South African heritage. Amongst the many creative things we were obliged to do was create Christmas ornaments. And then Jackie shared a very special story about her first Christmas in Canada, and and I thought it would be a really neat story for us to share with our other Circle of All Nations friends. And that's how the idea for this sudden video on the South African theme emerged. Of course, today is also a day of historical importance to South Africans, and it is in part a painful history, but it is a history that now uh, carries the hope of reconciliation. And so I wanted to say that today I'm wanting to share a little bit about our key connections with South Africa, to have a little discussion and sharing chit chat with Jackie, and then I'll share some photographs of Grandfather Commander's engagement with South Africa. With respect to something that links all of us to the Africa heritage is, of course, that is the motherland of humanity, and the most ancient of our human grandmothers uh, was found in the earth in southern Africa. I myself was born in South Africa, though, as you know, I'm Indian, and in some instances in Canada, the wrong kind of Indian. And sometimes that's a bit challenging to exactly figure out what my identity is, you know. I'm Canadian, but when I've sat beside Grandfather Commander, I've sometimes wondered what it means to be Canadian in Indigenous land. I'm South African, but I'm not African. And I'm Indian, but really have very few links with India. So I realized that my reality is a very convoluted one. And what I've been realizing also is that that is the case for many other people. I came to Canada to go to school in 1970, and I, to say, acquired a multiracial Canadian family. I inherited a multiracial Canadian family in many respects. And when I look back on it now, I think some part of my energetic self was trying to um, reverse the racial divisions of the South African image of family by creating a new one. And so we were a family of Indian like me, black, mixed race, white, a very complex background. And it involved a lot of effort to build bridges, not only amongst ourselves within the intimate family, but amongst all our friends and relatives in the larger uh, circle. And building bridges is not easy, and our lives not been without serious challenges, but also with many serious joys and breakthroughs that have enriched my life personally in immense ways. Um, with res- and actually, it is that experience that prepared me to understand better my relationship with Grandfather Commander and Indigenous peoples. The key items for today's discussion then move on to our South African connections with the Circle of Four Nations. In 1998, we hosted the first WORF Racial Harmony Gathering, lighting candles for the culture of peace. A few days ago, you guys would have noticed that on our Circle of Four Nations page, I posted something about our first gathering with the three Indigenous prophecy carriers, uh, Grandfather Commander, of course, and we were celebrating his birthday with Hopi elder Martin Gashwa Sioma and with Arva Looking Horse, Chief Arva Looking Horse, the carrier of the White Buffalo Calf Woman Pipe. And that was the first time the three indigenous prophecy carriers of North America were joined together to share their thoughts about the future, about the challenges, and about the realities that they saw emergent from their lands. And of course, uh, 20, almost 25 years later, one realizes just how prophetic those voices actually were with respect to the environmental changes and challenges we were all going to be facing. And this project in 1997, the special gathering, um, was hosted by Circle of Four Nations and the WORF Project. We hosted the event in Kiriganzibe. There were over 300 people who participated. We had Laxima drummers bring the indigenous spirit of drum to the place, to the event. And we also commemorated the International Day for Human Rights. And we had Arkansas Little Rock Nine representative, uh, an activist, Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, join us for that moment. So the peace building and bridge building work and education of Circle of All Nations has been continuing over the decades. In 1998, Grandfather Commander welcomed President Mandela at the Human Rights Tribute. And of course, that again draws on the interesting connection with his own wampum belt heritage. And he specifically mentioned this to me. He noted that in the early 90s, it was he who welcomed the Dalai Lama to Canada at the Human Rights Tribute. And then with President Mandela, he welcomed another global leader um, representing really the spirit of the Algonquin of the Ottawa River um, watershed and the Algonquins of the eastern seaboard, who welcomed the newcomers to their continents those many, many centuries ago. Uh, Grandfather's particularly moved with the Nelson Mandela story because he always noted that after 27 years of imprisonment, President Mandela talked about forgiveness. And as Circle of All Nations colleagues know, forgiveness was a critically important part of an energy for reconciliation in the William Commander dialogue. In the late 90s and into the 2000s, Grandfather Commander was invited to welcome uh, one after the other of the high commissioners to Canada from South Africa, the South African embassy's high commissioners. And many of them visited his lodge in Maniwaki. Wendy was one of the representatives of the South African High Commission who actually took a Wolf Project award back to Bishop Tutu for the Wolf Project. The Wolf Project, I should add for those folk who don't know, is an initiative that promotes racial harmony, inspired by Heather Akers and our other special advisor, Dee McTavish. The Wolf Project decided that it was going to focus on positive, educational, relationship building, racial harmony stories. And so that has really been entirely the energy of that project. In one of our last sessions, we talked about Donald Marshall Jr. being a recipient of the Wolf. Um, my notes remind me that one of the earliest recipients was actually President Mandela himself. He received a Wolf Project Award that was um, named after the constellation Corona Australis. Later, William Commander received the wolf named after the Corona Borealis. And so, in some respect, with our wolf image, both the leaders uh, guard the northern and southern hemispheres, and that's some of our interest with respect to our upcoming live video next weekend when we acknowledge the December equinox. In 2000, we hosted our first Millennium Peace Gathering, an international gathering where we had many South African youth join us, and we've talked a little bit about this in our May live video event. We talked with actually my sister Zeni Thumbadoo, representative of the National Association of Child and Youth Care Workers in South Africa, a group that is doing amazing work, has been doing amazing work um, in South Africa and inspiring um, change in the provision of child and youth care services to young people across the world, many other parts of Africa, in North America, and things like that. And we really feel connected with it because that work uh, was initiated really during the early linkages with Circle of All Nations at grandfather's gathering. And so we like to say that all the projects that Grandfather Commander blessed find their ways to inspire and influence us. And that is one very special one. Doing really, really hard work right now in the context of the COVID crisis. Yeah. We also had a representative from the Untapo Peace Education Center in our November session. And Sharifa Mola was a youth representative in the 20s, those many years ago, now doing important work in Denmark to build bridges. And remembering also her connection with the indigenous, with Grandfather Commander, with the ceremonial smudge that she finds still strengthens her work and aligns her with her own heritage from Africa. We did a presentation with the South African Rainbow Association during that Millennium Conference, linking the South Africans, the diaspora, with the South Africans from the motherland and building bridges in that fashion. Year 2001 was the year for the UN Conference Against Racism and Xenophobia. It was its second one, and a lot of hope of the world was pinned on that conference, transforming our realities. And as many of you who follow that thread will know there are many challenges, and in fact, it wasn't as successful as might have been. In fact, 9/11 manifested. Elder Commander supported Canada's preparations for that conference, but in fact, he wasn't part of Canada's official delegation to South Africa. But nonetheless, because this was such an important issue to him, this racism, this peace building, and this opportunity of adding his energy to the global stage, we both attended the conference. We each paid our own way to South Africa and undertook our work and our connections, partly through the support of my family. Um, and it was actually a very momentous uh, event for us. Grandfather Commander was invited to do two pipe ceremonies by the local people, one on the beach and one in the Valley of a Thousand Hills, the amazing landscape of Natal, KwaZulu-Natal. He participated in an anti-racism conference. He participated in staff workshops with the National Association of Child and Youth Care Workers and with the Umtapo Peace Education Center. We went to a session of a meeting of the Brahma Kumaris in Johannesburg, and there was an amazing storm that yeah broke down trees, I believe, at that stage. Very interesting. A few years ago, a woman who had been at that event those 20 odd years ago contacted me, still remembering uh, Grandfather Commander and his strong impact on the group and at that meeting. During this period, we went to a lodge, really, a recreation resort. And it was rather a strange experience because, um, yeah, because the energy was off. And so we went to lunch with our hosts, and they asked Grandfather what he thought of the place, and he said he didn't like it. And I was taken aback because he's usually, much more gentle, and but something had disturbed him about the place, and he was forthright about his discomfort. And the people then asked him to come back and do a prayer on the land because it was in fact something that they actually understood. They understood that the history of that land was that of a concentration camp. It was interesting. There were only about six of us there, um, under a few trees, and Grandfather put put down tobacco, one of the herbs, sacred herbs to the native people, a prayer to the land, a prayer to the energies of the land, put his tobacco down and offered a prayer. And during it, we could hear like a thump. Afterwards, he said, "Did you hear that?" to us. And we acknowledged we had heard something. And he said, he came and thumped me in my back. And what he was sensing was the energies of the peoples who had been buried or tortured or hurt in that place, actually thanking him for a prayer, his prayer that was putting them to rest. It's a kind of strange thing to talk about to like a live audience. A lot of folk who may not understand these dimensions of energy that were part of the William Commander experience. But it was an important part of the thread of his South Africa linkage. And then our next experience was even more intriguing because we were now then at the Sandton Center and in Pretoria. And all of a sudden, the wind whipped up, and the leaves blew around. And he said, Grandfather Commander said, something bad has happened to the world. And when we went to my sister's place, my other sister called to say, have you heard the news? The Twin Towers were down. Something in the energy of the land in North America had awakened grandfather's consciousness. And of course, few would deny today that that event has been something that's been bad for all of us, and superseded perhaps only now with the pandemic. Um, we were delayed in South Africa, and was, of course, rather a challenging moment for grandfather because he was rather old at this stage already, and really wasn't wanting to rest his bones in a foreign land. He wanted to be on his own turf. Uh, but the event gave us an occasion to meet with the Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa. And I'll talk a little bit more about him later because I noticed we're already at 1:30. So in the 2000s, we continued with our work in South Africa. We did some family group conference training with youth for youth at risk with both the NACCW and the TAPA organizations. And this I did with, in part with my colleagues from Real Justice, now the International Group for Restorative Practices. Ted Wachtel was my colleague at that point. In 2011, I participated in the UN COP17 conference, the Environment Conference. And some of you will recall I've already said this. Grandfather Commander did the pre-Rio prayer in Mitterrand, for President Mitterrand in Paris. And this is what launched the Earth Summit series, the Earth Summit that took place in Brazil. William Commander's daughter, Evelyn, engaged with that. But we say that grandfather introduced the notion of relationship with the Mother Earth during that inaugural conference. We attended in partnership with our colleagues from FANCIEV in Argentina. And now, so with that brief orientation, I'm wanting now to go into our live interview with Jackie Minar, and then we'll continue with a few more threads of conversation around our South African connection, and I shall share photos from my South Africa album. So you can see grandfather in action on the beach, and you can also see data evidence of our work. So let me now find. I see you there, and I like that. And I'm now going to go here, and now I'm going to see if we get Jackie. Jackie Minot is in Alberta. Hello.
Hello, Romola. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Wow. Thank you very much for your patience. I think my first video just kind of died, eh?
Yeah, in the middle of it, and then I didn't know where to go, and eventually.
But here you are. Okay. So being younger than me for sure, you've been here in Canada since 89, is it?
No, 96.
Since 96. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your story, and And I mean, I was saying a little earlier how we connected around Christmas ornaments.
Yes. Yes, that you want me to just growing up or just the Christmas story?
No, everything, anything you fancy sharing. I've sort of suggested to people that uh, because we're meeting today, we're partly meeting on this day of reconciliation,
Yes,
and
yes,
all of us have come from different experiences in South
yes,
Africa to Canada. I've said before in the past, um, I came through a sort of strange thread. I came on a
yes,
visitor's visa, became a student, I became a landed immigrant, I became an immigrant, I became, and that was like my thread through. Some people, of course, escaped South Africa for different reasons. Some people came for, uh, new opportunities. And
yes.
yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey, both in South Africa and here.
Yeah, I grew up in Paris, a little town on the Vaal River in the Free State. And um, I think so often what happens when you're a child, you're not aware of other people as much as you are aware of your family and what's happening and how you're living and all that. And because we didn't have mixed race schools at that time at all, mixed race schools came um, only when my children were in grade 3 and grade 5. And so they had that experience. And so when I went to left school and I went to study, because I always knew the race difference, and my dad always got into trouble because um, he paid his workers a fair wage, and he did year-end functions for and now understanding the situation better. At that time, to me it was just normal that he had a year-end function for the African workers, and he had a year-end function for the white workers. And and he sponsored local black soccer clubs, and uh, the people that worked for him and worked for us, we loved them and they loved us, and they were like our mentors, when we were little kids, and they were the people that we went to when we got hurt oftentimes. And so to us, they were just our family. Um, when I got married, and even uh, earlier on when I left home, because most families in South Africa had somebody working in their house that was of a different race. And to me, it just seemed wrong. So I never did that in my own home. When my kids were a bit older, a lady came and asked if she could work for me, and we started talking. And this lady, she was she was in the ballet, and she was working quite a few jobs to get her kids to study, and she was working towards getting a well on her property, as a little business and all that. And I learned so much from her. And then she came in, and she did ironing once a week, and we spent lots of hours talking. And um, that taught me a lot. But I think the biggest lesson I learned was when the Truth and Reconciliation, when they started doing interviews with people. And yeah, I was mad. I was hurt. I was, that why didn't my parents tell us about this? Why, how, how can one people treat another person this way? And I'd already in school experienced, because my dad was interned um, during the Anglo-Boer War, because we were from German descent, and knowing what Hitler did, there was that pain and anger from that. And the English-speaking people, they teased us and called us rock spiders and planks, and the things that kids do when they're little. So there was that, and then because I speak Afrikaans, there was also being called a Boer, and yeah. So then I came to Canada, and I saw an interview with David Suzuki, and I heard about how the Japanese and Chinese people were treated during the wars, and then learning about the First Nation history in Canada and the pain that caused and everything. So, and then one experience, we went down to travel in the US, and we went to the Hoover Dam, and it was such an amazing engineering feat. But I came away so angry because there was no recognition of what that had done to the people. And I think it was only last year or beginning of this year, I don't know, 2020 makes time, a bit of a time warp, that they got compensation and a recognition of the damage that was done. My grandson, my son-in-law is Mohawk. He grew up in Tyendinaga in Ontario. And they are from the Wolf Clan, so that was nice for me to hear about your Wolf project as well. And then Little Jones, my grandson, and just hearing about the stories. And then I was talking to him just the other day, and he was saying that residential schools, we always seem to think that these things are in the past and something that we didn't have any part of. And in 1996, the year we came to Canada, was sort of the end of residential schools, and so I feel the pain and the sadness of not knowing, but also understanding, and just I belong to a group called Curcio that was through the Anglican Church. And a lot of First Nation women came to this, and the gentleness that I found from First Nation people, and that I had seen in my son-in-law, and that I now see in my little grandson, is something that just gives me hope and love, for the future of all people. And yeah, this. So it's been a varied story, and like you were saying, almost loss of identity, because what are you? Are you German? Are you South African, but not African? Are you Canadian? Are you English? Are you Afrikaans? But Canada has been a welcoming country, and we came here just to find a better opportunity for our children, because at the time it was hard for our young people to find jobs or even positions in universities and colleges and things. And so we came over, and we didn't have, my husband didn't have a job. We didn't have much money. He found in South Africa, he had been an engineer for 15 years, of which 5 years was an engineering manager. And he found a job as a tradesman. So he also lost his identity in that sense, and he worked up north. So we only saw him once in 6 weeks for 2 days. I was raising my kids in Vancouver, and I had to work, where in South Africa I never did, because my husband worked on the mines and we were always moving. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and never let the kids out of my sight for a second, because of circumstances as well, and violence, because we lived near Ventersdorp when the AWB pulled up to Mafeking, and there were guards at our town entrance and guards with guns on our kids' school buses. And yeah, so living in Vancouver, we lived in Horseshoe Bay. And my kids had to, I had to start working because we had no money, and I worked in a coffee shop, and I had to leave my kids at home because I opened at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they had to get up, and they were 10 and 12. And so yes, it was really hard. I always call that first Christmas, because we came in July, and that first Christmas I always call my 25 cents Christmas because oh no, my 75-cent Christmas, because I had 75 cents in my wallet, and bread was 86 cents, so I couldn't buy bread. My daughter did after school care for one of my son's friends, so she would make sure that they do their math and their homework after school. So the other kids' mom came back from work, so she got paid for that. And then my son, being 10, a friend of ours had a restaurant, so he would bus, and oftentimes we had to have to use their money to buy food, and mostly, pasta and meat and cheese. And then as the month went on, sometimes it was just pasta. And we lived with my cousin for 3 months, the first 3 months that we lived in Canada. And so we found a place to live, and the kids were in school and everything. And my cousin asked if I would make, because as South Africans we oftentimes have leg of lamb for special meals. We haven't gotten into the habit of eating turkey. And she asked if I would do, they invited us over for Christmas, and then asked if I would do 2 legs of lamb. And lamb is very expensive, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I said, yes, I'll do it. And then a friend of hers was with a group called the Welcome Wagon, and they welcome people into Canada and put together baskets of stuff and all that. And she asked if I would mind if she brought me something, and I said, oh, that would be wonderful, thank you. And in this basket there was a frozen turkey, and there was some cranberry, and there was a gift voucher for IGA, and there was a gift voucher for the Bay. And my husband, working up north, he worked in Whitehorse and Flin Flon and Le Range and all those places. Didn't really have the proper winter clothes, because in South Africa a really cold day was 5 degrees.
Wow.
And so that was wonderful. And then a friend gave me a little Christmas tree, and I had some pumpkin pips that I saved from Thanksgiving, and we painted some pasta shells red, and we put those in the tree. And then my one friend gave me little glass bird ornaments, and these are the ornaments or one of the ornaments that I drew for the project that Romola was talking about. And so it's always so special to me. And the gift vouchers, the one for IGA was for $75, and the 2 legs of lambs cost $76.15 or something like that. In the Bay voucher, we were able to get some warm clothes for my husband, and there was even gifts for the kids for Christmas, and they were so happy. Kids are, when they're loved and secure, they don't even realize how hard it can be. And so it was hard, but also I'm so grateful for that, because that lesson of hardship and caring, I could not have taught my children any other way. Because at the end of the year, the kids usually, they do something with their friends before they see them, till after the holiday. So my 10-year-old son, because my daughter's money that she got, we used to buy some food, and then my son gave his first money that he got from busing to my daughter so that she could go with her friends. And then the second money that he got, he went to the movies with his friends. So the lesson that they learned through that has been amazing. And yes, I've always tried to tell them and teach them about other people and being considerate and caring and respectful. Um, respect uh, for every person's humanity. They always laugh at me because like when Saddam, I don't know if, yeah, I'll just tell the story. When Saddam Hussein was captured, um, he was a person that did horrible things, and but they showed a photo of him where they were opening his mouth and looking at his teeth or something like that, and that just broke my heart that somebody's humanity can be taken from them like that. Yeah, and then in the last 4 years of the politics in North America has broken my heart so many times. But yeah, so that's my experience so far. But I've still got a lot to learn.
Wow. Wow. That's such a powerful, powerful sharing. And thank you so much. I mean, I knew just a few details from what you shared the other day, but you've shared so much more. And I'm most grateful, most appreciative. Um, what we found through Grandfather Commander's gatherings is as people shared their stories, we broke through so many barriers and learned really, really, really what it was about to build relationships. And we all come with so much of baggage and preconceptions and things like that. And in my narrow uh, sort of like story of like the South Africans who came to Canada, um, and partly in the context of my involvement with the South African Rainbow Association and a few of those threads, um, there'd be the so-called white South African folk who,
Yeah.
you knew left with their diamonds. And
Oh,
then there'd be the black South African folk who came in via the refugee route and via the oppression. Then there'd be the other kind of like ones figuring out where they belonged, how they belonged. And you see this uneasy relationship building that is tentative all the time, but folk are trying. Then you have somebody like me. I grew up obviously in the middle of the mess that was South Africa, but in a like a kind of privileged stream, except you're conscious of everything else. But out of that, I went to school, I came to, the better life. I could either come to Canada or I could go to US. Came here because my aunt was here. Went to university. In those old days, people didn't know, who I was. So it was like life was fine. Till suddenly, folks decided that I was a packy. And then I got like a hard pear thrown into me, into my eye when I was
yes.
driving. And all of a sudden, the racial context
Mm,
became like a little bit different. And I say there I was experiencing like the overt racism that is a part of a subculture of Canada. But what Grandfather Commander experienced was the systemic, the subtle, that type of racism.
mm,
But in terms of the South African thread, I'm actually very ashamed to say, when I was at university, a student wanted to interview me about South Africa, and this is like in the 70s.
mm,
And I really didn't know enough about the apartheid history, the real oppression and the real resistance and the activism that was part of the thread, even though, interestingly enough, um, my uncle Harold was a doctor, and he used to stitch up all the gang guys. They come and call him in the middle of the night, and he'd go and stitch them up and stuff like that. One stage, he lived in Stanger, in Natal, KwaZulu Natal, and and we always sort of knew the story about when President Mandela spent a night at Uncle Harold's house. And in digging through the history, we kind of actually learned that he coordinated a meeting between uh, Mandela and Chief Lutuli,
yeah,
the Xhosa and the Zulu,
yeah,
and help unify them in the ongoing challenge. But even
yeah,
though that kind of history was so close to my own reality, I was protected from knowing very much, you know.
yeah,
The only memory I have is like we had a garden boy. And to
yeah,
this day, I pray for this Blondin because he must have been about my age. And we had this new house in Reservoir Hills. And I remember one night there was the fire outside, you know, and the people, African people, were gathered around there. And there was like a sense of fear for us, you know. And it's only later that I realized that our settlement was happening on what was probably very important land space for them. And, you know, in fact, I'd sort of like uh, pushed Blondin off his place in the land as I occupied it. So that is sort of like, you know, the vague thread I have of the South African thing. But it is only when I started to work in the criminal justice system over here and was um, assigned
yeah,
indigenous justice
yeah,
programs that I began to really, really understand the threads of the colonization, the colonial impact, the land oppression. And then I began to understand the South African experience a whole lot differently, a whole lot better. Uh, and I suppose that's why I remain so passionate about indigenous issues here, in a sense, trying to kind of like make up for all these things that we've all struggled with. And so, in terms of the thread of the story that you've shared, it's like not what Canadians will typically understand, not even perhaps South Africans will typically understand of the experiences of us immigrants, because oftentimes we seem to have escaped to a good life.
yeah,
And you know, I mean, I recall for multiple years just wondering all the time how safe for my family, every day worrying about that. So there's that level of the energy. Then uh, another strange thing, and I want to say this because you've raised the issue of German and Anglo-Boer War, and how um, coming to the new, the better life, for the better education, how I came with a certain kind of naivete. And then how you get co opted to accepting certain platforms in terms of really the Canadian discussion about what is the good life. And fortunately for me, I did a term of working with Veterans Affairs Canada. I used to go and visit veterans actually near where you are, Stettler, Alberta.
yeah,
I used to go to the Ponoka, um, and I knew the stories of veterans from the First World War, the Second World War. Oftentimes, every November, I'm remembering one old guy. I'd go and visit him, and when I leave, he wouldn't want me to leave until he recited the Robert Service ballad of the iceworm. He'd go da 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 da. And if he forgot the word, he'd get so anxious. I couldn't go till he got into the rhythm and then dulled his mind in some other place. So I know I have a passionate concern for veterans. But at the same time, I'm so upset every November. I am sometimes upset as a South African, even though it's so strange to think the Anglo-Boer War. Because I'm thinking, okay, but yeah, how must a Dutch person, an Afrikaner, feel over here in Canada uh, when when Canadians went to fight with
Yeah, they
his
fought
grandfather?
the final war that ended, the final battle that ended the war.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
and women and children. Yeah, that were fed food with glass in, and stuff like that.
yeah, not nothing redeeming anywhere about any of that. And then, by some strange chance, I studied German for 3 years
Yeah,
when I first came here. And through that or for other reasons, I became, pretty attuned to some of that story and that struggle. And many of my friends are German. And I know one of my friends is an amazing cook, amazing baker, amazing crocheter of all sorts of ornaments, but the food especially. And none of her children and her grandchildren don't like to eat her amazing food and her cakes because they're German, Austrian roots. So they'll eat the killer hamburgers, but will reject, the amazing things she makes. And it's that uh, suppression of identity that both they and she have to contend with in being Canadian. And this really, really ought to be like turned on its head. I remember when I worked in Secretary of State, the German community over there had done several years of creating posters because they were trying to show Canadians, gosh, their accomplishments in science, their accomplishments in music, their art and their creativity. So each year they did a poster to say, hey, you know what, we've contributed some good things to the world. Well, this final year, I now became the manager there, and the department decided they were stopping the poster project. So I had to tell the German folk, and in Saskatchewan, many of them have changed their names. They usually attach a ski or something like that, so they camouflage the German identity just to save face in this country. Well, anyway, so they got mad at me now because it was this dark face who was stopping the program. And then I had to fight with government to like have them open their, eyes to what um, problems they were creating. And so we did get the poster going for another year. And
yeah,
and out of that, I realized there are like 600 communities of Germanic roots in
yes,
Saskatchewan. It's like, yeah. So the William Commander work is really a work about respecting diversity.
yeah,
In South Africa, we say Ubuntu, I
yes,
am because you are. But the grandfather commander expression of Gina Daganuk um, um, articulates it in a much bigger way because it develops and shows relationship at that person to person level, but it also shows a relationship with land, with nature. And I
yeah,
want to then now lead to the theme you mentioned with the Hoover Dam. My sister
yes,
Beulah and I drove through that amazing place as well.
yeah,
And yeah, like you say, it's an amazing feat, but it's
yes,
actually drained Lake Mead It's killed the Colorado River, which no longer reaches the ocean. It has stopped the annual flooding and cleansing and flushing out the systems. And it's killing one of the great wonders of the world, the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And, so the Jinaway Daganuk relationship makes you also realize that all of these things eat back on us. And,
Yeah.
and that is really where the pandemic is emerging. It's just a natural phenomena because everything is so vulnerable
Mm.
to bacteria just flowing all over the place. And it's vulnerable because we've cut all the trees, we've, dumped
Yeah.
chemicals all over the place, we've mucked up the waters, we've,
Mhm.
you know. So the thing is, how do we wake up and create grounds for something new? Well, partly it's because you share like this and you help break down the barriers. Um, I think that's really, really pretty powerful story. Yeah, it's interesting. Your native family.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's also, his father is French Canadian, and his mother is Mohawk, and then his grandma is still alive. And so to me, it's just wonderful learning the stories of the seven grandfathers and learning about the tree where they buried the weapons and um, yeah, yeah, and having the house smudged and just his love and care and how I can see it in my grandson as well. And then because I can't speak Mohawk, but I try because Jones can now he can count in English and Afrikaans and Mohawk and French and Spanish. So that's just it's not talking or anything like that, but just to experience that with him and Gonolungwa is I love you, So so to me, it's a wonderful experience, and the yeah, and then Canmore Canmore is such a contrast as well in a bubble because it's such a rich place, and Adam teaches in Morley,
Okay.
um, just to hear about the experiences of the children and the people there and the kids he works with and all that, is very healing and very informative to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the area you're talking about. I know some of the. When I did justice work, I did a lot of work in Alberta, and yeah, uh, and interesting too in terms of the healing energy of the land. When I first came to Canada, I
Yeah,
studied literature, studied Canadian literature. And Canadian literature was all about the big, frightening trees and the horrible, frightening winters and
yeah,
everything oppressive and frightening about nature. And 10 years later, I went on my first trip to the Rockies. So I was going like from Edmonton to
yeah,
Calgary, then Calgary to Banff. Okay, beautiful drive. Then to Lake Louise, very beautiful. And then the end of the day, now we're coming back through David Thompson Highway. And then I started to get this massive headache
yeah,
as we went through layers and layers and layers and layers of the trees. I thought, oh my God, you know, what is this? This is what Canadian literature is about. It took me 10 years to understand it, so I said to myself, this. Well, another 10 years later, I went to the Banff Center where Janice is teaching
yeah.
and met Elder Tom Craneby. I don't know if you've ever met him.
No, I haven't met him, but I know.
he was
Well,
previously my Aboriginal justice elder from Alberta. So I already knew him. But anyway, he's doing this presentation, and all of a sudden he's talking about the crossroads and the pathways that the ancestors would have walked in that amazing area that you're in. And I, of course, probably went there a decade or so before you, before so many of those roads were cut into that place.
mm,
And anyway, it was then that I realized that my headache was really not understanding and respecting the ancestral energies of the land. And it's really the respecting. And, I was hesitant to say this earlier when I was talking about William Commander and South Africa and outside Johannesburg, where we went to this concentration camp. But
yeah,
when we first went in there, um, there beautiful plants, of course, vines and things like that, um, a mud pool, and then I walk along and there's a dead bird, and I just like pulled back, and then I turned direction and walked somewhere else. But that gave me a sense of the strange energy, but I didn't engage in it. I did. I just like withdrew. But then later, when William Commander said, just directly to the gang, I don't like it, they understood why he didn't like it because they were creating a spa or whatever it was on a place that had been a prison where a lot of people had died painfully. But the interesting thing is when William Commander acknowledged the land, then he felt like he put the land at rest. And that is sort of like the kind of thing I understood later about my Rocky Mountain experience. That perhaps if I'd acknowledged, oh wow, this is an ancient place, there have been people who've been here before, then things would have fallen into a kind of energetic grounding. And that is the kind of thing then I've learned increasingly from William Commander and all my years of that circle work. And that's why I say the Ubuntu interrelationship thing is so big. It's so
yeah,
big. And in our previous videos, we've talked about grandfather's travels around the on the Sunbow 5 walk. This is 25th year anniversary. And part of that involved taking indigenous prayer and ceremony to land that has been wounded by
yeah,
all this bloodshed. And how one of our friends, Steve McFadden, continues to tell the stories of that journey,
yes,
showing how relevant 25 years later that healing energy and that healing effort was for the land and the people. And it's the
mm,
kind of thing that we absolutely, I think, need desperately right now because I think we're really out of the proper answers. When you talked about the Saddam Hussein thing, it makes you think, right? The Ubuntu, I am because you are.
yeah,
And then what do we become when we disrespect each other in that kind of huge way? Something has got to shift. So after the South Africa experience, the citizen over here interviewed grandfather and wanted to know what he thought about post 9/11.
mm,
And he said, like, make peace, not war. And he was a political guy. He knew his history, he knew this, and he was an activist for many years. But he also realized that at a certain stage we have to move beyond,
mm.
and we have to find a pathway to some kind of reconciliation that is
Uh,
genuine.
Mandela. He was, yeah, yeah, it's loving.
Yes, uh, and yeah, how much one has to contain in order to make that outreach.
Yeah,
Yeah. So grandfather used to like to say, "Good enough for two." How you doing? Good enough for two. And we like to say that, gosh, if every one of us tried to be good enough for two, we could like rebalance that karmic energy out there. And of course, today is a perfect day for this because I was wanting actually to do a PowerPoint presentation for today. I just was too hectic to do it properly. When I went to research um, the December 16th, the Battle of Blood River, Peter Retief, and all of those names that I remember from childhood because I grew up in Mandani. I grew up on the Tugela River. I grew up in all these places and knew these stories. And then, my sister Zeni went to Rwanda a few years ago, and she was like rather amazed at how the communities who have been like um, experiencing and expressing such hostility towards each other, part of another larger colonial pattern, but nonetheless, how they were managing to march forward together. And she said, you know what, there's something like a one day when they go back to their own families, communities, to kind of like grieve and mourn and come to terms with the losses. And then they march forward and put their best foot forward to create a new reality for themselves and their children. And yeah, it seems to me like that's what we need to be regenerating, especially like November 11th. We must be regenerating those kinds of energies, not kind of like glory days, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and one more thing I wanted to say about that. Oh, yes, and I wanted to finish on this note. This Mi'kmaq elder once told me um, that in the new year, his communities used to host a forgiveness, a reconciliation feast. So the chief would then apologize to people for things he might have done deliberately wrong or unconsciously, inadvertently. And he set the tone for, you know, a forgiveness, reconciliation. Then other members of the community would do the same, and then they would start the new cycle of energy with like a prayer, a hope for renewal. And it seems to me like right now, COVID time, you know, uh, um, if 9/11 was the first like global wake up, uh, the pandemic is the next one, you know. One was, and with Circle of All Nations, these are our two key themes, um, the environment and the people, the peace building. So if one was about the racial disharmony and the war and the violence, the other is about the environmental panic. These are the two things we need to put so much more effort into reconciling. And gosh, Jackie, your story has really like um, presented a wonderful energy for today.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. So if you have anything more you'd like to say, and of course we can continue the conversations any old time into the future too, or we can march together and in fact create that circle of all nations.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yeah, do you have other things you'd like to share?
No, no. I think um, yeah. It opens you up so deeply that I think that's enough for today.
Okay, well that's it, isn't it? Sometimes when we are open that deeply, we understand and experience life in a way that others, you know, can't or won't. So even as painful as it is so rich.
It is.
It's so rich. It's so amazing. So I'm so moved and so touched and so grateful that you've shared this here today, and I'm sure it'll go back to be part of the reconciliation energies of 1838 and perhaps earlier. Yeah, yeah. Prayer for the land. And okay, so I shall be seeing you tomorrow, and we shall be partying, and proving that we are potential artists.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a whole nother story.
a whole other energy. Yeah. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So, thank you so
Yeah,
much again. All the best for the season from all of us
you.
Circle folk. I'll
And
now go back to the rest of the agenda. It's only
okay.
planning us to be here an hour, and I've already kept you too long. But thank you. Let's miigwech. Miigwech. Okay, so close that. So let me go back here. So wow, I that was really really a special moment. Thank you so very much, Jackie Mana, for joining us and sharing. I'm going to go back quickly now to my agenda. Um, I'm going to talk about, well, I think we've covered most of those themes. So right now, I'm just going to move straight forward into my photo album and just share a quick few memories, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So let me get this up here, and I hope people can still hear and see us, but we'll just continue. So here in this first image is Grandfather Commander, and beside him, super, super special Elder B. McTavish, and other members of the community who supported the Wolf Project work, and Ray Sundstrom, director of the Wolf Project. In, gosh, 1997, we created the first Circle of All Nations t-shirts thanks to the help of one of our friends, Natalie. And we presented them as gifts to many, many people. At our gathering, here's Chief Gilbert White Duck in the background, one of grandfather's security ladies with him. Oh, and that is it. Natalie is the person who helped me create those t-shirts. And presentation to South African reps from the High Commission. Here's Wendy and, gosh, somebody with the name S visiting us where his grandfather's lodge was being created in Maniwaki. Here is one of the amazing high commissioners from South Africa, Teresa Solomon. She was the first mayor of Cape Town in the new apartheid period, and most gracious. And here's grandfather welcoming her in the Museum of Civilization, the one created by Douglas Cardinal. Oh, here's grandfather. Well, he had smudged himself at one stage and had burnt off his. Oh no, this is when he had fallen and hurt his uh, uh, arm and shoulder, and decided he was going to give up shaving for a while. And there he is, met President Madiba Mandela. South African Harold Head is in the background there. Kashala Masala, the First Lady. A report actually um, by Sarifa Mullah on the Circle of All Nations 20, 20 no, 2000 gathering at Nepean Point and at the Museum of Civilization. And here she is with Grandfather Commander celebrating his story. Here are a few South African youth with our Haida friends, Frida Ends, Juanita Ends, and Billy was our key photographer during the first Circle of All Nations Millennium Peace Gathering. Voice of Youth animated and kept our work so alive. Here's Grandfather Commander sharing wampum bell teachings with the grandson-in-law of Nelson Mandela. When he, musician, poet, came to visit the South African High Commission, he insisted that they come and pay respects to Elder Commander. And yeah, that was a very special moment. Oh, this is a guinea fowl feather that I found at the gathering after our 2001 Circle of All Nations spiritual gathering in Maniwaki. And when I found that on the grounds, I thought, oh, Grandfather Commander is going to be going to South Africa. And indeed he did. And here he is at the Durban harbor sitting with Patricia. Patricia was a person who actually Tom Dosto introduced to us, Tom Dosto being one of our friends from North America. And Patricia then became grandfather's driver, and she would find parking anywhere. What she did was call upon her parking angel. And there, downtown Durban, in the rush, she'd find the perfect parking spots. So when Grandfather Commander and I came back to Canada, we'd call upon Patricia's parking angel to help us find parking spots. Here's Grandfather Commander with the Mtapo crew. My brother-in-law, Dina Solia, is the uh, energy behind this amazing work that continues to manifest to this day in great educational, peace education conferences involving young people. Here with Mrs. Biko. Um, Grandfather Commander sat in a circle with with her and others. This was in part the celebration of the Steve Biko heritage. I see in the background there's Asha. It was a very interesting thing because sometimes our our stories are related to the pain and struggles of people. And sometimes we create ourselves as victims in order to challenge oppression, challenge abuse. But Grandfather Command always took a different approach, and it included forgiveness. Didn't ever include forgetting the wrongs that were inflicted on him or his people, but he learned how to energize forgiveness so that he could create the energy for new relationships. And yeah, it was part of a very interesting discussion. Here's, Kessie, my other brother in law, wearing a Wolf Project t shirt. Here's Grandfather Commander on the Durban beach. Here, this is a moment during the United Nations second conference against racism and xenophobia. And here was one of the protests on the streets that Grandfather Commander joined, um, meeting South Africans on the street, the old Casper vans waiting. Okay, here in South Africa, Grandfather meets the indigenous voice for environmental issues. Um, Gosh, I don't want to make a mistake. There's a gold in gold tooth in his name. pardon me. Uh, but a very special moment when grandfather met indigenous peoples from North America in South Africa. Here's the South African group, the delegation preparing for the UN conference, and there some of you may recognize um, Warren Allman from the late Warren Allman, former Solicitor General of Canada, the lead the delegation. And here is Auntie Maraj, Mrs. Tara Maharaj, a friend of my mother's who actually lives in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, where I used to be a parole officer. She's 101. She was part of the activism of the Indigenous women of Moose Jaw, and she too attended and participated in that conference. Um, Grandfather Commander. And then here's Grandfather Commander with some representatives of the indigenous group. And sitting beside him is Chief Billy Two Rivers, Mohawk Chief. Um, I believe that is the elder Ken, involved in environmental issues. Ken Deere, Ken Deere, and some of our other colleagues. Uh, yeah, so I met this particular elder, Elder Billy Two Rivers, when I went to an Indigenous conference in Victoria, BC, and then we were heading back to Ottawa, and we were waiting at the airport in BC, and we started to chat, and I said I felt like very strange to be involved in all these Indigenous activities, and because I felt like I was like the wrong kind of Indian really for this work. This is way back in like maybe 91. And he says, oh, he says, don't worry, you just tell them you're an East Indian. You're coming from Ontario. Kind of special. So yeah, here's Grandfather Commander again with members of the Canadian delegation, including Auntie Maharaj. Um, Here with Auntie Joyce and gosh, Cammie's friend, late friend Kamini, grandfather hosted a pipe ceremony on the beach as requested by people. Here he is with the two chiefs, and the other chief, of course, is was the chief of the fan, and gosh, um, in view of his challenges of some of the racism uh, that indigenous peoples were uh, struggling with. Got funding at AFN reduced dramatically. Uh, Gosh, yeah, special moment. Cree elder, grandfather with some South Africans, grandfather with Dina at the anti-racism conference, Dina Soria from the Untapo Peace Federation, here developing an agenda for anti-racism and action. Here's the circle that grandfather engaged in. Oh, here's grandfather commander with the Danish delegation, and my sister Zeni and my nephew Jade, who's now in China with two babies, and I mean Jade, Marlon and Jade. Um, Of course, that was an interesting moment because of the reconciliation with the Vikings, as it were. Grandfather Commander had met Queen Marguerite of Denmark and had created a canoe for her, and that's part of another story. Um, yeah, this photo is in our book, and it was only when this person died that I realized that he was there in the background, and that is Strini Mudley, who also served time at Robben Island with President Mandela. You've seen this one. Oh, yeah, here's the back side of the Wolf Project t shirt. Promote racial harmony and intercultural understanding. And yeah, grandfather making friends there. Valley of a Thousand Hills, South African landscape. This is where he did another pipe ceremony on the rocks um, with the workers from the National Association of Child and Youth Care Workers. And there's my mother as well, and Nasli, touring. Hello.
Hello.
I'm doing a live video, madam. How are you?
Oh,
But it's
okay.
very good because you are the person who taught me how to do these live streams. So say hello to people.
Hello, everyone. I'm April. So I have been working on this summer's co-op job with Romola, and I'm doing the landing page with her, and also our new website with her.
Okay, well, cool. Great to see you pop in at this particular moment. And I'm just about finishing our session.
Mm-hmm.
The live video died at the beginning. I had to restart it, but
Okay.
I'm hoping that people can hear us. I had a nice interview with a fellow South African. I'm really glad to see you. Did your term finish? Are you finished and you had a good?
Yeah, I'm finished this week.
You,
So I just want to maybe have a little chat with you later today, if
okay,
you have any time. Yeah.
okay. We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Cute. April helped us figure out how to do live video on Facebook, and we believe we're the only people who've managed to do online open gatherings. Anybody who's interested can come and join us. We're very scared every time we start, but yeah, be patient with us. Here, grandfather found teepees in South Africa. Oh, and here's another special moment. My sister Beulah and Savo took us to the zoo outside Johannesburg. So here, let me show you this painting. And this is, when I saw this painting, I realized the grandfather commander was going to meet Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa. So here, I was invited to an event of the South African High Commission. And when I saw this image, I saw the image of the Seven Fire Prophecy Wampum Belt. It was truly, truly amazing. Well, the then High Commissioner, Andre Jacquet, who joined us actually at our 2001 gathering in Maniwaki, tried to locate him but wasn't able to. When grandfather and I were actually in South Africa, there on the beach, I talked to a woman beside me. She was actually a Canadian. She had Credo Mutwa's cell phone number. I called him. We made a connection, and then when 9/11 happened, we were really in a position to meet him because we were delayed in South Africa, and my sister Beulah took us to meet him in his home. So, yeah, that was an incredible moment. We lost that incredible historian, artist, shaman, um, uh, igniter of the voice of Southern Africa. Um, this past year, and I shall do a separate session about him. But in fact, here he is with Ma Virginia, grandfather in his home. You see some of his art in the background. When grandfather commander wanted to talk to him about the Seven Fires prophecy, he said, "Don't have to tell me. We've got those stories in our legends as well, in our histories as well." That's my sister Beulah and not me. Well, then, when Beulah and Savo took us to this zoo, what did we find were these lions. And what I discovered, I have to say, just only a few months ago, is that these are actually the white lions of South Africa, the endangered white lions. And I don't know if you can see this. I probably you can't yet. I'll show you in a minute. Karen got me this book, Mystery of the White Lions, and I realized that actually we had met them. Part of the story of Gina Wade-Daganuk and the interconnection. Grandfather at one point also said, "Where are the monkeys?" And within a few minutes, the monkeys arrived at Zeni's place in Durban. Grandfather kept hearing frogs and eventually went to find them. And there he found them in the swimming pool. Uh, Judy, um, a late elder, was given many items, many special items from different parts of the world. And she brought them to grandfather for prayer and honoring. And this is one representative of South Africa. So yeah, now he's looking rather pleased because he's waiting at the airport, waiting to get on the plane and return to South Africa. I mean, to return to Canada. And so there you go. Here we're at. So, gosh, um, glad to see Luma there. I don't know whether I see anybody else who would like to talk to us. Please let us know right away. Otherwise, I think I'm going to be closing things off. Um, okay, let me just say, would anybody like to share anything at this point? If not, I'm going to say, let me go back to my agenda. Let me say, yeah, let us close with a prayer for reconciliation. We will be hosting our next event on the 21st, honoring the winter solstice and our cosmic relationships. And here's a beautiful image created by one of our students at Carleton, Miduran, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next time. Okay, Miigwech, keep safe on our journey of peace building and reconciliation. Thank you. Bye. Hi, Jamie. Would you like to say something? I shall try you. I'm going to just try to see if one of our special friends would like to um, chat with us. I know he's been noting grandfather's human rights conversation. No, there's no answer. So maybe at some other point, this special circle friend from Hudson, Oka area will join us and chat. And now let me then go back to saying goodbye. Gosh. Are you saying that's okay?